Good evening. My name's Ed Sellich, president of Speak Up Newport.
How you doing?
And I'd like to welcome you to our October program. This evening we have a candidates forum for our state offices, Assembly and State Senate, and also our congressional race for the United States Congress. First of all, I'd like to thank Bungalow for the food. You guys all enjoy that out there? All right. Speak Up Newport is a civic affairs group for the city of Newport Beach, not associated with the city, but within the city. We do these monthly programs. We also sponsor the Mayor's Dinner. That's coming up in February, so look out for our announcements on that. And if you so desire, please go to our website and join Speak Up Newport. Your contributions help support these programs, so we appreciate it if you do that. So we're going to get started with the program. We got a lot of questions to ask our candidates this evening, and I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Tony Petros, who's a Speak Up Newport board member. Tony?
All right, good evening, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We're very excited to have this august panel with us. I wanted to, first of all, introduce our candidates. We'll talk a little bit about some housekeeping rules. We'll go over the format, and then we'll engage in the questions. This is a forum that is focused on issues as it relates to our community, Newport Beach, and the impact that Sacramento may have on what happens here in our town. So the focus will be here. We have with us a number of candidates you're all familiar with, I'm sure. I want to, before I begin, let you know that Congresswoman Katie Porter was invited. She had to decline tonight. I had another engagement. So we have with us the Honorable Scott Baugh, former chairman of the Orange County Republican Party. And that was going to be one of my housekeeping chores. Oops. This is the closest thing that these pinstripes are the closest thing I have to referee stripes. And I hope not to do that. We are trusting that in Newport Beach we maintain the highest decorum. And this is not the Dodger game or the Anaheim Ducks opener. Those are in other venues. Tonight, we would appreciate it if you would hold the applause till the very end. We are not looking for any catcalling, any hand waving, or anything like that. We are here to offer information to enlighten the electorate and our citizenry. And if you could please adhere to that, we would greatly appreciate that. Thank you. He's a former Assembly Republican leader. He's an active member of the community, having founded the Orange County Marathon Foundation. Scott serves as chairman of the Gang Reduction Intervention Partnership, which works with law enforcement throughout the county to keep kids out of gangs. To my immediate left is the Honorable Diane Dixon, elected to Newport Beach City Council in 2014. She served as mayor and has served as chair of the Water Quality Entitlements Committee and as chair of the Finance Committee. Diane is the immediate past president of the Association of California Cities, Orange County. She's a current member of the Southern California Association of Governments board member, the Regional Council, and is a board member of the Orange County Council of Governments. Judy Mancuso is the founder, CEO of Social Compassion and Legislation that sponsors and supports legislation to promote animal rights, protection, and welfare. She was appointed by the Laguna Beach City Council as a member of the Environmental Sustainability Committee for a 2-year term, which she currently serves as the vice chair. She was appointed by the Speaker of the State Assembly as a public member to the California Veterinary Medical Board in July of 2010. The Honorable Kim Carr was elected to the City of Huntington Beach City Council in 2016 and served as its mayor in 2021. Kim also serves on the boards for California Commission on Aging, the Orange County Sanitation, Fountain Valley Regional Hospital, Cal City's Executive Board, OC Division, and the National Water Research Institute. The Honorable Janet Nguyen was elected to represent the 72nd Assembly District in 2020. Janet is a former state senator, former Orange County supervisor. She is the former vice president of government and public affairs for her local chamber of commerce. She's the first Vietnamese American elected to the state senate, was the first woman supervisor to represent the 1st District, the first Asian American and first Vietnamese American to serve on the Board of Supervisors. Janet previously served on the Garden Grove City Council, where she was the first woman city council member elected in nearly 35 years, and its youngest member ever elected. Quite some credentials for all of our candidates. Again, we are here to offer information, and to that end, I've kind of already gone over the housekeeping for you, please. Let's hold the applause and just take in the information that we receive from these fine people. We're going to start with opening remarks. Because Ms. Porter is not with us, we are going to give Scott the opportunity for a 5-minute opening remark. The other panelists will get 2 minutes. After that opening remark, we have 6 questions. They will be asked, and we will rotate who goes first after that. And then we will wrap up with a 2-minute conclusion. Scott, you're a little bit off the hook. Where you will participate in the opening remarks and then just be available for the group afterwards. So thank you for your participation.
I do have a housekeeping question. It's my 26th wedding anniversary today, and I was supposed to be at dinner with my wife, and she gave me dispensation for 45 minutes is all.
We'll take you for 5 and then
Yeah, all right. Thank
out.
you very much. Yes.
All right. We do have a timer in the front row. You will all receive a 30-second indication right there. And with that, we will begin. Mr. Baugh, would you like to make some opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Tony, and Speak Up Newport, and thank you, Ed. Tony mentioned that I was a founding chairman of the Orange County Marathon Foundation, where we've trained over 40,000 children in the importance of exercise and nutrition. We started that race every year right here in Newport. I think you were the very first mayor that kicked off our race, so thank you for that. It's been a tremendous success. But at that time, I think that was around 04 or something. 2002, my son was born. His name's Jackson. He's now 20, of course. And at that time, our national debt was a couple $1 trillion. When he turned 8, that debt was $16 trillion. And now that he's turned 20, that debt is $31 trillion. This is one of the reasons I'm running. We have a Congress that scratches every spending itch that they have. And we cannot sustain a debt load like that. And you see how it affects inflation. And interest rates are now going up. It's affecting the economy. It's affecting retirement plans. The joke is all these 401ks are turning into 201ks because of the impact that the stock market is having. And so we've had a lot of irresponsible spending. And so one of the issues that I want to address is balancing our budget and living within our means. Somehow we've forgotten that it does matter. And eventually it will come back to haunt you if you don't live within your means. And so we are now having the complications of all of that. We are heading into a recession. By most experts, they'll say that. And as you see, the interest rates are going up. Housing is cooling down. And the prices are now haven't come down yet. Hopefully don't come down too much in Newport here. But the point is there is economic chaos being introduced into the system because of our spending habits. So I'm running on a balanced budget amendment. I think we need to live within our means. And the other important issue that I care about a lot is crime. We have open borders. And I don't know where you stand on open borders or closed borders. I believe in a very tall fence, a very secure border, and a very wide gate. If we need people coming and going, let's facilitate that. But by God, let's make sure we know who's coming and going. Let's make sure they're not terrorists coming into this country. Let's make sure that 12,000 pounds of fentanyl that came into the country this year, enough to kill every American more than once, doesn't get into the hands of our children. They're starting to lace it now to make it look like candy. And so you have children that don't even intend to get high, don't even know what that means, are now at risk, and some of them are dying because they dared to take a piece of candy. And then you have other people that just want to do some recreational drugs, okay, but they don't know how addictive it is. And so we need to stop the fentanyl. It's a synthetic fentanyl that's coming from China through our southern border. So we need to know what's coming across the border. We need to make sure there's no human trafficking, no terrorists, and no drugs coming across. With respect to local crime, I think some of us have lost common sense in this country. I think the entire defund the police movement is lacking in common sense altogether. We need strong police. We need strong public safety in all of our communities. And when you have Prop 47 and you have the state legislature basically saying you don't have to enforce these crimes, guess what happens when you don't enforce the law? People start breaking the law, and they break it more and more. And so we need to tighten that down. We need to enforce our laws. We need to keep our communities safe. We need to keep our police fully funded. And at the same time, at the national level, we need to make sure that our fiscal house is in order and that we give predictability to the markets, and we don't allow this runaway spending where you scratch every spending that you have. So those are my top priorities. I'll stick around for a few minutes, or you can call me or reach out to me at ballforcongress.com, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Scott, thank you so much. We will excuse you. If you'd like to go, please share our congratulations on 26 years. And now, again, if we could please hold the applause because we've got a long agenda here. Diane, would you like to open with your 2-minute statement?
Sure. Thank you, Tony. Can I undo this? Is this on? Testing? Is it on? Very good. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you, Speak Up Newport. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Ed. And thank you for all of you coming out. And we're in heavy-duty election season. I am running for Assembly District 72 as a Republican candidate to go to Sacramento because Sacramento has been in the hands of a Democrat supermajority for almost 20 years now. So as I tell you in a moment, the list of horribles is because of one party. And California is at risk. Scott mentioned a few things that do transcend into us in terms of how the spending is going. But I've got a long list of the horribles, I call it. We have the highest income and sales tax in the nation in California. We have the highest gasoline costs and the highest gas tax in the nation. And $2 of whatever the current cost of gas today is attributable to unique California costs of taxes on the refineries and regulatory issues. So our residents, our drivers in California are paying more than anyone else. We all know that gas in Arizona is about $4 a gallon. We have the highest housing costs in the nation. We have the highest energy costs in the nation. We pay the highest prices in the nation for food and the essential costs of goods that provide the essentials for our families. About 6 months ago, when inflation started to rise, the estimated cost by the Brookings Institution was each family of four was experiencing $5,600 of additional costs in spending due to the high cost of inflation. That number is now up to 8,000. And I've got 30 seconds. We have an unreliable power supply, an unreliable water supply, and crumbling infrastructure in every category. Our schools are failing 8th grade math and science tests. We are at number 47. Bottom line is my opponent is a lobbyist. She's a state lobbyist, single issue. She's ran for city council in Laguna Beach and lost twice. I have been on the city council 8 years, served as mayor twice. I am familiar with the local issues and we'll be talking more about it. I urge you to pay attention to the problems that are in California because I intend to go to Sacramento and do something about it. So thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you. Judy, would you like to make your opening remarks?
Hi, everybody. I've lived in the district for 27 years in Laguna Beach. And I am not a lobbyist, actually. I am a founder, CEO, and president of my nonprofit, and I hire lobbyists. And I've worked on issues, animal rights, environmental for 17 years, education, anti-recidivism, So it's pretty deep and wide as far as the various legislation I've worked on. I've worked for small companies. I've been a business owner myself, for-profit and nonprofit, for the first 20 years of my life. And so I jumped into this race because I will be ready on day one and know how things operate and how to be successful in Sacramento. And yes, I've been on a state board, which is also very helpful. But I will say Diane's list of horribles are different from my list of horribles. My list of horribles has to do with Diane and friends hanging out with Holocaust deniers, red baiters, notorious homophobes, and people abiding with QAnon. So the horribles list is very different. And you can check all this out on the internet. It's all there, and it's videos with these folks in it. And then you can all decide on which list of horribles you're with, because I think that my values identify with District 72, which is inclusiveness, number one. And thank you.
All right, Kim, would you, folks, please, thank you. Kim?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I am Kim Carr, and I am running for State Senate District 36. So I'll give you a little bit of background about me. I grew up in West Garden Grove, graduated from Pacifica High School, worked 2 jobs, and went to Cal State Fullerton, received my degree in American Studies and a minor in economics. I spent 25 years in the business community as the national sales manager for television stations throughout Southern California. I was appointed to the Public Works Commission in 2012, and in 2018, not 2016, I was elected to the Huntington Beach City Council, where I won as a first-time candidate in a field of 15 in a city of over 200,000 people. Last year, I had the honor of being the mayor in Huntington Beach, and some of the accomplishments that I achieved with my council included reducing homelessness by 35% in the city of Huntington Beach, launching the first mobile crisis response units to address mental health, substance abuse, and well-being, converted 674 units to middle-income housing so that our nurses, our teachers, our first responders could work and live in the city that they love. I increased spending for capital improvements. I fully funded the police department. In fact, actually increased positions for our police department. Some of the things that I am very focused on when I get to Sacramento include homelessness, and I have a track record of success with that, which hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about. Crime and public safety, as I mentioned, I've always backed the blue and will continue to do so. The cost of living in California is excessive. The environment, I had the honor of being the mayor during the oil spill last year, and I'm sure some of you all remember that. And finally, local control. Sacramento has way too much overreach. As a mayor, as a city council, I can tell you what it's like to deal with these unfunded mandates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Janet?
I'm just, can you hear me? Testing. Okay. Let's try this. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
But okay. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and I just want to first thank Speak Up Newport and all the people involved for hosting this event. Again, my name is Janet Nguyen. I was born in Saigon, Vietnam, where my family escaped communism after the fall of Saigon. To save my family from a life without freedom, my parents made the life-changing decision to flee the country, a treasonous act at the time. We left on a 10-meter wooden boat, not knowing what the future would hold for our family or whether we would even survive. We were fortunate to finally arrive in California in 1981 and call this incredible state our home. I was raised here in Orange County, live in this district for over 30 years, graduate from our local public high school in our district, graduate UC Irvine, and currently live in Huntington Beach with my husband and 2 young boys, ages 9 and 11. I'm a businesswoman. I also have served on the various elected positions as mentioned earlier. I currently am a sitting state assemblywoman serving almost half of the Senate district. I'm very thankful to live in this great country where someone like me, an immigrant, that arrived here with nothing and spoke no English, can find so much success if they choose to work hard. I was named Legislator of the Year by the American Legion and the Vietnam Veterans of America, Champions of Manufacturing by the California Manufacturing and Technology Association for my work to protect jobs, and was awarded this year's 2022 Civil Justice Gavel from the Civil Justice Association. I've received top ratings from Howard Jolliffe's Taxpayers, OC Tax Association, OC Business Council PAC, National Federation of Independent Businesses. I've also been endorsed by over 75,000 California law enforcement officers because I support policy that hold criminals accountable. And I will continue to fight the movement to defund the police and support funding our law enforcement officers.
Thank you, Janet. We're going to move on to our questions now. We have 6 questions. Each question you will have a minute and a half to respond. First question. Over the past number of years, the state has taken more responsibility from local jurisdictions, including housing, general plan law, and public safety. How would you address this erosion of local control and the growing power of the state legislature? Diane?
Well, thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, you have to always allow for 3 seconds before the mic kicks in. Thank you for asking that question, because that's one of my, unfortunately, favorite topics, the loss of local control. As a city council person, we have all witnessed, those of us in any city have witnessed the erosion of local control. I started to realize this in 2019 when I was mayor, and I would ask staff, why is this mandate? Why is this mandate? Well, it's the state, it's the state. So the Newsom and the supermajority Democrats in Sacramento have never met a law they haven't liked, and they have called the giant sucking sound that is taking power from local governments. I'll use one example, and that's housing law. Just in this current session that just concluded, it's the death by 1,000 cuts to our local cities and local cities. 128 new laws on the books only related to housing, specifically related to housing. What this means is the vision that Newsom and Governor Newsom and his Democrat and my opponent would support is converting every suburban neighborhood into a high-rise, high-density high-rises with less green space, no parking, and no height limits. I would want to fix those changes, return the control back, or partially control, go up to Sacramento and amend these laws to bring control back to our cities, because people in Sacramento, which I call Moscow on the Sacramento River, central planning does not work in our coastal cities. We must take control.
Thank you. Folks, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I have my beautiful wife here. We raised 2 young daughters, and if I have to ask one more time, she's going to put you all in timeout. Please do not applaud. We will have enough time for that later. You are here to become enlightened. This is their opportunity to shine. You will not make any change of anybody's opinion. Please sit on your hands. Thank you. Judy, how would you address the erosion of local control and growing power of the state legislation?
Okay, well, I'd like to talk about that. And I'd also like to talk about that the supermajority in Sacramento did not fall out of the sky. Those folks were voted in. And the reason why they were voted in is because Californians have these shared values. When Diane speaks of, this is the second time now I've heard her say this, referring to Sacramento as the capital is Moscow on the Sacramento River, that's not going to make the supermajority want to work with her, okay? You have to be able to get along with everybody. And as far as the work that I've done over the 17 years, I've had Governor Schwarzenegger sign our bills into law. I've had Republican authors and co-authors, as well as Democrats. So this kind of rhetoric does not work in Sacramento. Diane did run the last time against Cotty, and she lost. So I would address it by working with everyone and the folks back home in the district to identify what needs to be changed, and then making those changes and working with everyone to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Kim, how would you address the erosion?
Thank you so much. And as I mentioned in my opening statement, this is a concern of mine. And what's critical is that you have a seat at the table and that you show up to work and that you actually do something when you are confronted with these challenges. I know firsthand what these unfunded mandates have on cities like Huntington Beach and what they're having on Newport Beach. And what I will do, and my vow to this community, is I will actually take a vote and take a stand. Unlike my opponent here, who missed 42% of the critical votes last year, and that's not me just saying it, the Orange County Register called her out on this. And some of these housing mandates that you spoke about, Janet didn't take a vote on it. Now it's one thing to call out Sacramento and say that you have a one-party rule, but if you have a seat at the table and you don't do anything with it, shame on you. I'm not that person. I'm somebody who is a champion for the community. That's what you want in Sacramento. You want somebody who understands your values and who will represent you, not a party, not the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party. That's not what you want. You want somebody who's going to represent you up in Sacramento. That's who I am. I have the ability to walk and do the talk. I cross party lines all the time because you have to be able to build consensus. As a business leader, I had to work with all different types of people to get things done. But if you have a common goal, if you have that passion, you can get it done. But you need to be able to work with people.
Thank you, Kim. Janet?
Thank you. The 42% is a little cute because actually that time I had COVID. I was in quarantine for 14 days. But my opponent wouldn't care for that kind of detail. So to be cute of whether 42% in her minds, what votes those were. Having previously served on the City Council and the Board of Supervisors, I understand the importance and the impact of local government. A government for the people is better to address the local needs of the people since they are there. This is also a great opportunity to highlight the importance of local elected officials. The local City Council, county supervisors all have a direct line to the pulse of the community. It is important that those entities do not actively give up their power to this state. I'll give you a current example. A recent action in Huntington Beach where my opponent sits, upon which my opponent as a council member voted to actively prevent the city attorney from taking action against the state to prevent SCAG from influencing local zoning laws, effectively seizing power to Sacramento. That's not what we want. We want those who are going to Sacramento to fight for us, not to go party with the same party. She is endorsed by the LA Progressive, a group that you know that are aligned with Sacramento. So the one-party rule, the communist rule, and the one party doesn't balance our state. We need a balance in Sacramento, and I will fight for you in Sacramento.
Question number 2. Some experts believe that the RENA housing allocation was a predetermined political maneuver at a SCAG regional board meeting, resulting in an unfair housing burden to coastal communities, and specifically Newport Beach. Now the state legislature is aggressively implementing that unfair allocation. What specifically is your plan to rectify this unbalanced approach? Kim?
I'm so glad I get to answer that question because I can refute some of the information. First of all, I'm not endorsed by the LA Progressives. I'm not even sure what group that is. But second of all, because of these incredible unbelievable rules that are coming down from Sacramento, We have tried to fight Sacramento legally. In fact, we're 0 for 6. And if you want to really get in trouble as a city fiscally, continue to fight Sacramento and lose millions of dollars. So we tried that route, and I wish we could continue to try that route, but I can't afford, as a city person and being fiscally responsible, to waste your tax dollars on lawsuits that I know that I will lose. And as far as the RENA numbers, you couldn't be more right. At SCAG, we don't have a voice. And I made that a point in the last couple of council meetings. Orange County, we are 1 county and 5, and we do not have a voice there. So I have allocated or I have advocated to have a more representation at SCAG. Personally, I think we need to do away with SCAG, and I would like to see Orange County have its own sort of housing element, because we are crushed by LA County and we're crushed by Riverside, and that's exactly what happened in this last deal. So for me personally, I will do everything I can to make sure that Orange County has a better seat at the table, because currently we don't. And that's why it's so critical that you pick somebody like me who has the ability to have that voice and can be a real champion for District 36.
Thank you, Kim. Janet?
You know, it's funny, it's in Huntington Beach, we have an elected city attorney. It doesn't cost taxpayer more because he can work 24 hours and not bill the city per hour. So that's an excuse. City elected attorney in Huntington Beach could go and fight for Huntington Beach residents, but my opponent decided to cut him at his knees. I understand the importance of local government and control. I actually this year introduced AB, Assembly Bill 1258 this past year, to give local government the ability to request a judicial review of the methods used to determine a city housing needs. What may be good for one city is not necessarily good for another city. So this bill would strike a balance between the state and local government. But you know what the one-party rule in Sacramento did? They didn't even give us a hearing. And this was supported by numerous cities in Orange County. They wouldn't even give us a hearing because you know what? Sacramento is going to want to tell us what to do. And I'm going to leave with this. My opponent, who talks about the arena credit, she voted to support 13,000 high-density residential unit in Huntington Beach with limited no parking spaces, forcing small businesses to relocate and overcrowding neighborhoods. Is that who you're going to send up to do what Sacramento wants us to do down here, is to force our hands?
Good. Diane, what's your plan to rectify this approach?
There are solutions because there were legislative actions, laws that were passed that have created or enabled Sacramento to impose by executive order the 3 million housing units that must be built in California over this RENA period, the next 8 to 10 years. So when I've been involved with OCOG, you mentioned that, Tony, Orange County Council of Governments. I do sit on the regional board of SCAG, and I will say SCAG is no friend of Orange County. That is absolutely right. The Orange County is in a minority, and without getting into the methodology, many members of OCOG and SCAG who represent Orange County cities have been battling legally, and OCOG actually has a lawsuit pending to challenge the methodology of how those housing units were assigned. Newport Beach, as many of the residents in Newport Beach know, that we have 4,500 units that we need low-income and moderate market rate units. However, here's a solution. In 2005, there was a lawsuit by the city of Irvine against HCD, Housing and Community Development, on their RENA numbers, and those numbers were a fraction what they are today. City of Irvine sued, they lost. The legislature enacted a new law that said cities cannot sue on their RENA numbers. Well, I hope we could work across the aisle because the moderate Democrats in Sacramento want a Republican team that can work with them. We have to change that prohibition for suing because it does cost a lot of money to sue California's legislature. Also, restore local government, SCAG and OCOG's ability to challenge and we create cap and trade type unit trading of housing units. Yes, thank you. There are solutions.
Judy, I'm interested to hear your plan.
Well, Diane is on that SCAG board, so it seems like she might have had some influence on these numbers, and it's unfortunate that she didn't. I am against some of the laws, the SB 9 or 8 and 9 that came down. I want to protect single-family residents, such as the neighborhood that I live in, but I also want to fulfill affordable housing needs. And I think, we have to figure out how to do that. We have to look at repurposing buildings that already exist. And as far as these numbers go, they are hard. They're tough. For little Laguna Beach, where I live, it's next to impossible to find this housing, and we're doing the best that we can. So I would definitely want to renegotiate and get everyone that we can to the table and see that if we can have a plan, how many houses can we possibly support, affordable and market rate, and then maybe take another look at it. But we have to give it an honest effort as well. We can't just say we don't want to do it, because that's not a solution at all. Thank you.
Move on to question 3 then. Assembly Bill 109, Propositions 47 and 57, are examples of legislation that has adversely impacted our community, putting criminals back on the streets and our residents at risk. What specific idea do you have to turn the tide of this type of failed public policy and restore Newport Beach to a safer community? We'll start with Judy.
Thank you for that. I have a lot of crime statistics that I've been reviewing, and there's a lot of crime that's come down, and then there's other crime that's gone up. And one of the crimes that is at an all-time high is actually hate crimes. And Orange County is really taking its lead in the hate. And we have to reverse it. We need to all get along. We need to restore civility. And as far as addressing the crime, we need to fund our police, fully fund our police, but we also need to look at what the department does and move those services that can be handled by mental health providers, such as the Be Well program that Kim has implemented, and implement best practices to take some of this load of the homelessness crisis off the police's agenda and get them into just fighting crime. But we really need to dial down the hate. Thank you.
Diane, looking for specific ideas.
Well, this is very personal to me because I've been married 47 years to a career major crimes prosecutor. Los Angeles, head of major crimes, in Orange County, now working for Todd Spitzer, head of major crimes and special projects. Absolutely, AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57 have been critical in creating a high crime situation in California, but it's more fundamental than that. Laws, the criminal justice system, the supermajority Democrats who have been in power now for 20 years, has really ruined the criminal justice system in California, and that has made our cities unsafe. California is a public safety disaster with smash and grab. You've heard of smash and grab. You may not have heard of follow home robberies. Anybody hear about that? That's organized gangs are watching when you walk your dog, when you leave in the morning, when you go to your office, and when you come back, and they're pouncing upon arrival. The reason this is happening is there's been a tremendous volume of prisoners who have been released from our prisons because of the relaxation of our sentencing standards and our parole guidelines, all done through state legislation, not those propositions. This is happening in the highest volumes. These convicted murderers that were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole are now released on our streets. And these people are released without rehabilitation, without jobs, without money, and they are committing crimes again. It's legislation to toughen our criminal justice system, and I will be working across the aisle to do that.
Janet?
I'm proud to be supported by our Sheriff, Don Barnes, and over 75,000 police officers across the state, I am the law enforcement choice in the 36th Senate District. I support our law enforcement personnel and believe in giving them the tools, resources, and funding needed to keep our streets safe and crime-free. My opponent, she's voted to defund the police twice. The Sacramento supermajority and LA progressives continue to champion policies that supports early release for violent criminals, decriminalizing drug offenses, and a lackluster response to rampant retail theft. And yeah, she has been endorsed by LA Progressive. It's on their website. Hello. You don't even know who you supported. And it's because she aligns with them on their criminal justice reform policy. During this past legislative session, I've introduced many legislative pieces. One, AB 1955, which would have added the possession of fentanyl with the intent to sell, drug dealer, to the list of felonies. Sadly, the bill was defeated twice by the supermajority. I am happy, though, to add to this what Judy mentioned, AB 485, which was signed by the governor, which would require local police department to provide and post updated hate crime stats on their websites.
Thank you. Kim, specific idea.
Thank you very much for the question, and this is something that hits home for me. Prop 47 is a hot mess. It needs to be reformed, and anybody who works in retail knows it's a hot mess. If any of you have been to a Home Depot in Orange County, there's a good chance that my sister opened up that Home Depot. She's worked for the Home Depot stores for the past 35 years, and I've seen firsthand what Prop 47 has done to our local retail establishments. It's pretty scary. And so we absolutely need to reform that. But we also need to look at the reason why people are committing these crimes. A lot of it has to deal with substance abuse. And as mayor of Huntington Beach, we launched Be Well OC, which addresses mental health, substance abuse, and well-being. And so a lot of these people who are committing these crimes, some may be involved in organized crimes, but some of them are supporting a drug habit. And we need to really take a look at that and see what are we doing to make sure that we stop this continuation, this cycle of abuse. So I have been always very strong with the police department. I do want to point out that Janet claims that I have voted to defund the police twice. I really think that she needs to go back to the people who provided her Oppo research and get a refund, because she's claiming that I made a vote on June 3rd, 2017. I was elected to the council in 2018. Not sure how I could have made that vote. And then the second vote where I voted to continue to fund the police, it was unanimous, including my Republican colleagues. So again, not sure where she's getting this data, but it's completely inaccurate. I'd ask for a refund.
And I will stand corrected. It was 2018. That's my fault. Question 4. Recently, newspapers have reported multiple deaths associated with state licensed recovery facilities, including a Newport Beach neighborhood shooting. What proposal will you initiate to guarantee state enforcement of the conditions they place on licensed recovery facilities? Janet?
The state needs to enforce their licenses, period. They need to allow cities to regulate and enforce state sober living homes. Back in 2016, I voted to support Assembly Bill 1283 that would have put the power to regulate sober living homes and facilities back in the hands of local government. Unfortunately, this bill was defeated by, again, your Sacramento supermajority one-party rule. I also supported SB 992, which empowers the Department of Healthcare Services to be more careful in approving or denying licenses and making them enforce current regulations that are currently on the books. Local city must have the final say as to where these kinds of facilities are placed for the safety and welfare of your family and your children. And I will continue to support these common sense legislation so that you have the control on who will be in your neighborhood and to making sure that your family is protected.
Kim?
Thank you. We actually took some actions in Huntington Beach to address this very issue by adding additional ordinances to the city and modeling it after what we saw in Costa Mesa. Because we also agree, these need to be enforced, they need to be licensed, you need to be assured who you're living next door to. And it is one of these, it's one of the issues that has been most concerning to us, because we know in Huntington Beach, we're a magnet for these types of places, just like Newport Beach, just like Laguna Beach. Our coastal cities are getting inundated with these. So it's imperative that we have licenses, and then also make sure that people who are providing resources for the good. There are places that are actually doing incredibly good work, but we need to root out the bad actors. We need to have stronger enforcement. We've been doing that in our city. There are ordinances that do stand up to the laws, or actually to courts, to lawsuits that try to prevent you from enforcing these types of things, but it can be done. And as a mayor and as a city council member, I've been a strong advocate for doing just that.
Good, thank you. Diane?
Thank you. I think we all agree. We're in violent agreement here. The state, Newport Beach, has our neighborhoods that are becoming, they're a magnet, that's a good word to use, a magnet for these unscrupulous operators that have learned that if they are 6 beds and under, then they are licensed by the state of California. If they're over 6 beds and over, then we can permit them, but we don't. Because they know they can go to the state, these unscrupulous operators of sober living and group homes, they can go to the state, get a license, and know that the state will never enforce. And so our ordinances with Costa Mesa, perhaps Huntington Beach, and Newport Beach, we're all aligned. We can enforce 6 and over. It's 6 and under, and the 6 and under is what's infiltrating our cities. All of our cities, because it's come to Newport Beach. I talked to one neighbor of an operator, and 90% of them are from Oklahoma City, the people being helped. And that's the sad thing. The patients are not being helped. They're not being helped with their addiction. And they're being put out when the insurance runs out, and they're on the curb. They're curbed as even expression, and then they become homeless. So we have to work together to allow the state to allow us, the cities, to manage and regulate the rules and enforce our own local codes, because we cannot. We should. I mean, the state passes laws regarding law enforcement, and we enforce the laws of the state. Why can't the cities enforce the laws related to group and sober living homes? We must enforce at the local level.
Judy?
So I lived 4 houses down from a sober living home. And let me tell you what a nightmare it was. We had people ODing in the middle of the night. We had drugs delivered to my neighbor's house who has children, and they actually walked in and left a bunch of opioids on her countertop. So we looked into this, and one of the problems is they're allowed in residential areas. They should not be. They are a commercial business. There are workers 24 hours, or they should be. So they should not be in R1 or R2 areas. There are preemption issues. The state does not oversee these. It is federal government. So there's federal law, there's state law, and there's local ordinances, but you can only go so far with the local ordinances. And the out-of-state people that come, and then the insurance runs out, and then they are left on the sidewalk. I literally saw these people in my neighborhood sitting on a curb with their suitcase. This cannot be allowed. We have to protect these people. It's fraud. It is consumer fraud for them, and also insurance fraud. So I will work federally, state, and local to get something done. Thank you.
And I will I will acknowledge that we've graciously provided seats. Why don't we stay back here on question 5? I'm going to switch it up a bit. Homelessness has surged over the last few years as Newport Beach and communities throughout the state grapple with that issue. Is this surge a result of not enough state resources, not enough enforcement, or something else? And this is the question, what actions do you propose to take to solve the problem? Diane?
we are all grappling with it. I think we all know that the state has spent $20 billion to address homelessness across the state, and I think that's just like putting money on a bag on the freeway. It's just all been frittered away. We have not. The city of Newport Beach, we have consistently have homeless. We have joined with Costa Mesa with a shelter, and we're working to find a permanent housing solution. The problem, as we all know, is that we, cities, not just Newport Beach, cannot enforce our anti-camping laws. We have a shelter, and so we ask the homeless to please go in the shelter. We have Be Well, who helps on the chronically homeless. We retain Be Well to do this, to deal with the mentally ill who are chronically homeless. If they say no, and if homeless say no, there's nothing we can do. They can stay on the curb in the public space, even if we have a shelter and even if we have Be Well to get them the help, the surround kind of services that they need. In Sacramento, we will look to see what we can do about the anti-camping restriction that we cannot enforce our local laws to encourage, more than encourage, help people get the help that they need and get into a homeless shelter, get into a mental facility to help cure or deal with their mental illness. So there are solutions, but the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has restricted what cities can do. We must legislate, there's a new law to give cities, empower the cities to protect our neighborhoods, because it is something that has been going on for too many years. The state has thrown money at it, and that doesn't work. We have to change the law. Thank you.
Judy?
Well, the homeless crisis has been coming on for a very long time, and I talked about this at the last forum. It did start about 50 years ago when Ronald Reagan closed the mental institutions and put everybody out on the street. After that, the Democrats looked like they were soft in wanting to help people, and it became a very taboo type of situation where it was like, if you want to help homeless people, you're being a softie. So nobody addressed this problem for a very long time. And with the drug situation, these drugs that we have now that are more powerful than ever, and with COVID and working poor, there are so many different people that are homeless, and they have to be addressed by each and every different type of category. And we need to get them help, and we need to get them off the street. And Governor Newsom's conservative this new law he just passed is going to help and go a long way. So there's plenty of solutions. We just need to do it and implement them. Thank you.
Kim?
Thank you. This is something that when I got elected to the city council, I was incredibly focused on and wanted to implement policies that would make a difference, and we have. But it's not easy. And there is a lot of money that's available, but getting access to that money as a city like Huntington Beach requires us to go to the county to get that money. And sometimes that can be a challenge. But to really address homelessness, as Judy has mentioned, homelessness has all different faces to it. And you have to have a lot of different tools in the toolbox to be able to address it. For some people, it's mental health. For some people, it's just finding a home. For some, it's reuniting with a family that may be in a different state. And you have to have all of these resources at your fingertips to be able to address it effectively. That's why we opened up a navigation center to enforce our anti-camping ordinances. That's why we launched Be Well OC to address some of the mental health and substance abuse issues. That's why we are doing permanent supportive housing. That's why the care court, which Judy mentioned, will be very critical as we move forward to address people who, even if you gave them a house, we wouldn't know what to do with it. So it takes your business owners to be a part of the solution, your faith-based organizations, your nonprofits, your residents, and it takes a city council. It takes everybody rowing in the same direction to really make a dent with homelessness. And it's not easy, I can tell you, but I have the experience, the passion, and the commitment to do that up in Sacramento and make a real difference here in California.
Janet?
I just want to go back real quick. My opponent said that I need to find a new researcher. I think she needs to find new staff. She voted twice in June of 2019, never said 17, and June of 2021 to defund the police in Huntington Beach. 51% of homelessness in our nation are in California. 51%. Since 2021, California has spent over $17 billion with no real plan of action to tackle this problem. I've worked with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to find realistic, workable solutions to addressing the homelessness crisis in our county and our state. I introduced AB 2569, which would have created a working group to develop a Department of Homelessness Prevention, Outreach, and Support, and place resources available under one umbrella, creating a one-stop shop for our state to properly distribute resources to counties and cities to get the homelessness off of our streets. And I will continue to implement and actually author these types of legislation. Currently, homelessness spending is spread across the different state, our state and our local agency, and we're not seeing the positive results. Further, we have to have a real conversation, an honest conversation of the real issue of homelessness. The governor just signed into law SB 1338, we call it the CARE Act. It was a bipartisan legislation which would be implemented in Orange County by 2023. And this is basically similar to a mental health court.
Thank you, Janet. Our final question. You can all breathe now. The city of Newport Beach has expended great efforts creating regulation of short-term rentals. And now we're facing a new threat from fractional ownership, such as the Picasso model. What are the levers in Sacramento you intend on using to assist with this new threat to single-family neighborhoods? We'll start with Diane.
Yes, this is something that's occurring in Newport Beach. We had 2 fractional ownership homes. A year ago now we have 12. And we just discussed this at the City Council this week, and it's now being discussed at a study session or action by our Planning Commission. It is a tough issue because the fractional ownership of up to 8 persons, individuals who can own a home, typically they want to do it in a beach area, so it's really concentrated along the water in our beach part of our community on the peninsula, so it's a really tough issue. I think Sacramento can deal, or cities actually can deal on their own with the timeshare ordinances they have. We as a city are looking at how to modify our existing timeshare. The timeshare law was created when you talked about 100 units. We're not talking about 100 units, we're just talking about 1 unit divided into 8 pieces. So we as a city have to look at our timeshare ordinance. We have to figure out what's happening with these disruptive technologies that are changing our communities, restricting them or prohibiting them. We haven't come to that conclusion. It's a property rights issue for some. It's a property values issue for others to live next door. They're just like short-term rentals. We have regulated short-term rentals in Newport Beach, and we put a cap on the permits. It might be the same type of thing with a permit and restricting the number of days that a family can use their 8th share, or reducing the number of shares. It's a conundrum. Nobody has dealt with this, and there's no state law. We have to look at all the tools in our toolbox because it's going to be disruptive to our communities.
Diane, Judy.
Thanks.
Well, it might be a conundrum for Diane because she took $206,000 from real estate owners, brokers, realtors, and landlords. And I got that from the Secretary of State website and added it all up. So it does add up to $206,353.98. So I was not familiar with Diane and the city council when I started running for this seat, and I watched hours and hours of your city council meetings. And what I found was that the residents have been asking for change on the short-term rental issue for quite some time. And the council just kicks the can, and the residents are out the door. Matter of fact, one of the council members said, well, we're not going to change any short-term rental thing. Let's have the industry do it. Let's have the industry offer us. And that's on the city's website if you'd like to go back and actually watch it like I did. what we did in Laguna Beach, and this is a local issue, is you can do an ordinance and set your short-term rentals to 30 days. And that way you're not dealing with this, one night, 2 night thing. The problem is that everyone does it illegally. And if you go Google Airbnb Laguna Beach, you find a bunch of illegal units, and we're not doing enough enforcement. So this really isn't much of a state issue. This is something the local jurisdiction can handle if they have the will. Thank you.
Kim?
I really don't like it when Sacramento tells us how we need to manage our housing. And that is something that we have been looking at with our short-term rentals and trying to define what we want to do on our own. And I've actually worked with Diane Dixon on this particular issue because we've been looking to Newport Beach on how to come with a thoughtful, sustainable short-term rental program. So when it comes to the fractional ownership, I really do think that the residents need to determine if this is something that they want to regulate or if they want to permit in certain areas. It may make sense to have a limited number in a coastal area. I haven't studied the issue deeply enough. It hasn't hit Huntington Beach. But I do think this is really when we should be getting the feedback from our residents and our district. Does this make sense for Newport Beach? Is there a huge opposition? I understand there's a whole study group that's going on with this, and so we'll be interested to get that sort of feedback to see. But I don't think it should be coming from Sacramento, because I think this is where local determination really does make the most sense. So, for example, when it does come to short-term rentals, Sunset Beach wanted to have them. They very much wanted to have them. So we as a city said, okay, you should do that. At the same time, I don't want Sacramento telling us, you need to have short-term rentals all throughout Huntington Beach because it reduces our stock of affordable housing. So these types of issues really should be dealt with at the local level. And as a state legislator, I will do just that to make sure that you will have your local control.
Thank you, Kim. Janet?
This is not an issue you want Sacramento involved. Don't even give them that idea. This is something that we need to keep quiet, control it down here. Don't give them any more ideas. We're fighting enough battles in Sacramento on your behalf. Giving them more ideas to shove it on us is not going to be fair. This is an issue that there are certain neighborhoods that works, that wants it. Others don't. Maybe they want the entire city regulated. Maybe they just want part of it. This is something that I believe, and I will continue to fight. As I mentioned, having been on the city council and the county board of supervisor, I understand local government control. And the last thing you want is any legislator to go up to Sacramento and say, hey, this is a great idea. It's not a good idea. Keep Sacramento away from us as fast as we can, as far as we can.
Good. Well, we've concluded the questions. What I'd like to do is offer each of our candidates the opportunity for closing statements. This will be a 2 minutes, and we'll start with Janet.
Again, I'm running for state senate because our state cannot continue down this path. Population growth has halted. Why? Because this is the most expensive state to live in, has one of the highest crime surges, and 51% of the nation's homelessness lives in California. We rank first in the highest cost of living. We have the highest gas prices in the nation, with gas costing more than $2.60 than the national average. We rank the highest, #1 highest cost of goods and services. Housing in California has become a pipeline for our young families and new residents. As a mother of 2, it's important that my boys can choose if they want to live in California, not because they're forced to move because they can't afford it. We must bring relief for struggling families by abolishing the gas tax, or at least immediately suspending the gas tax, and lowering the cost of housing and goods and services. We need to stimulate our economy by cutting the red tape that are restricting our small businesses, and we need to make our state more competitively nationally. Aimless spending is not a solution to our homeless problem, and police reform budget cuts to defund the police are not a solution to stopping the increase in crime. We need common sense solutions, not special interests. We need a fighter in Sacramento that will stand up to the supermajority, and I have done that. I was dragged off the Senate floor because I did not agree with them. I will fight for a better future for our state. California is at a breaking point. That is why I hope that I can count on your vote and your support. Again, I'm Janet Nguyen, and I'm running for state senate, and I would be honored to have your support and vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Kim.
What we need in Sacramento is to make sure that your voice is represented. You need somebody with a track record of success, somebody who gets things done. I have done that since I started on the city council, constantly working for my residents and getting things done. And I say to people, if you can get it done in Huntington Beach, you can get it done anywhere. I am known as a problem solver, as somebody who can work across the aisle, and somebody who is very pragmatic and common sense. I have 25 years of business experience, and that business experience is going to be invaluable when I get to Sacramento. I like to point out that I'm also 100% pro-choice. I do not believe that politicians should interfere with your medical decisions. I also believe in you love who you love, and you have the right to marry who you want to. I am fiscally conservative and socially liberal. I have been backed by teachers, firefighters, nurses, carpenters, plumbers, everyday hard-working folk just like you. People who don't want handouts, but people who want an honest day's work or honest day's pay for an honest day's work. Those are the people that I represent. I don't have the hundreds of thousands of special interest money that Janet has. The people that donate to my campaign are just hardworking people. Donations from $3 to $1,000. But I don't have a lot of corporate money because I don't represent corporate interest. I represent you. And that's what you're going to want in Sacramento. Somebody who will have a seat at the table, somebody who's fiscally conservative, somebody who understands this community because they've lived in this community their entire life and will be truly passionate and a public servant at heart. That's who I am. That's why I've been successful in Huntington Beach, and that's why I will be successful for you. Please vote Kim Carr this November. You can check me out more at votekimcarr.com. Thank you.
Judy?
Well, I've been getting big things done in Sacramento for 17 years. So when we put together our agenda for the district, I will be able to deliver for you because I know how to do it. And I have a great track record that I'd love to share with you. And you can visit my website. You can Google me. There's plenty of articles that talk about my work in getting things done. I am all for women's rights. To not talk about women's rights and climate change is a bit surprising since those are two of the top things of our time, and gun control when we have had these massacres and we have someone with us who was, her sister was killed in one of the biggest massacres in Seal Beach in Orange County, Bethany. I reject special interest money so that I can work for you and not be influenced by the others. My environmental creds, I've been doing environmental work since the 80s. All of a sudden now I see my opponent is an environmentalist. On her last mailer, I guess she's done some polling that showed that people actually care about it. And I'm not beholden to fossil fuel industry like Diane is, and takes money from them and was nowhere to be found when the oil spill happened. Again, I'm all about diversity and inclusivity. I am effective, and I will work on price gouging because none of us like to go to the grocery store and pay $8 for paper towels, or all the prices are up on everything. And yes, it's a supply chain issue. It has to do with the pandemic and the real Moscow. but also it's price gouging. Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Diane?
Thank you, and it's been a great evening this evening. Can you hear me okay? This is a kind of bittersweet time because I'm coming to the end of my council, 8 years on the Newport Beach City Council, and it's been amazing. And we are just reminding me of all the things we've been doing in the last few years. Short-term rentals, I'm very proud that we did get that under control, and we've established a cap. Then it got accepted by the Coastal Commission. So it was a multi-year effort to get a majority vote on the Newport Beach City Council, and we accomplished that, and I'm very grateful. And incidentally, it's not necessarily the real estate industry, it's the property management companies, and we work together with them to find that solution. So it is bittersweet. I did enjoy being with Kim Carr on the Coast Guard flight over the oil spill the day after the oil spill. It was in my district, so I was out there at 8 o'clock that morning, before it was even publicly announced practically. So fortunately, we had very little damage in Newport Beach. I am looking forward to taking everything I've learned as your representative on the Newport Beach City Council. You know, all of you in Newport Beach know that I've had 34 town halls. I enjoy working and must work and listen with our people because all the residents, they care. We don't need another Democrat in Sacramento. There are enough Democrats with a supermajority. We need more balance. We need to work across the aisle, constructive relationships. Republicans and Democrats, moderate Democrats, do work together. Many bills are passed. Janet got, I think, 12 bills passed and signed into law. It can be done. I look forward to joining Janet in Sacramento because we must have better policies. We must do something about the cost of living. The number 1 through 5 issues in this election nationally and in the state of California is the economy. My opponent really didn't say anything about that until the very last moment. So we have to solve the high gas tax. Our people, our lower income people are negatively affected significantly by the high gas taxes. I look forward to going to Sacramento, working collaboratively, constructively, and representing all the people of this district, Assembly District 72, and I appreciate your vote, Diane Dixon, for Assembly 2022. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And thank you all. And now, thank you, Kim. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for their thoughtful comments. I hope that you and our audience have been enlightened and can go to the polls with some good information. Thank you all for your patience and your candor. We look forward to our next event, and I'll turn it back over to Ed.
All right, thank you, Tony, and thank you, candidates. Our next program is going to be on November the 9th. It's going to be on fire safety, so be sure and join us for that. We do have some written questions from our... hey, folks, can you quiet down? Thank you. So we do have some questions from our Zoom participants, and we're going to pass those on to the candidates and ask you to answer them individually. So we'll email those to you. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming, and have a good evening.